really been looking forward to Denis Villeneuve's rendition of Dune for a while now. I love the Dune books, the David Lynch film, and the sci-fi miniseries both had great elements to them, and Dune 2021 could have been amazing. It had a lot going for it truly, but now that I've seen it, I wanted to talk about the good, the bad, and the unfortunate about this film. But before we get into the topic at hand, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted. And if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon for just $1 a month or supporting via memberships. All of the links are in the description. And of course, I do really appreciate all of the support. I want to give everyone a big spoiler alert because I am going to be talking a lot about the plot and comparing different renditions of Dune to the 2021 version of Dune. So first of all, Denis Villeneuve's the director, and I didn't think his past work on most notably Blade Runner 2049 was bad. I know it was a very hit or miss movie for people, but I actually thought it was a good continuation and it scratched that Blade Runner itch, but Dune is a very different beast. While 2049 had a good plot, it was very, these are the main characters, this is the story, and it ended up being pretty straightforward, but with Dune there's a lot of source material, and Villeneuve's never worked with something so complex before. Frank Herbert's work is very dense and there is a lot to cover in a movie, and that's where the problems with this movie start for me, because going into the film there's obviously a lot that needs to be explained. What spice is, what Arrakis is, who's part of House Atreides, but the way that things are explained are done in the most boring, basic ways possible. At the beginning of the '84 David Lynch movie, Princess Arulin is At the beginning of the '84 David Lynch movie, Princess Arulin is explaining what spice is and what Dune is, and it sets the tone extremely well. And in 2021 Dune, Chani is talking about how her people were wronged, who will their next oppressors be, and Paul literally reads a book that explains what Arrakis is. It's such a basic way to set up the movie, and in my opinion, it's not epic at all whatsoever. They focus a lot at the beginning on explaining the environment and setting, which obviously needs to happen, and they even added scenes with the Atreides homeworld Caladan, which was really great to see, but while that's taking up time, it means less on the main plot, and pacing for this movie was just off. Moments that are really important felt rushed, and looking at the House Atreides attack, for example, before that you briefly hear, yeah, a lot of people really don't like the Atreides, like the Harkonnens and even the Emperor, but then boom, the attack is just happening. The pacing is actually pretty similar to the sci-fi series in a lot of ways, it's just a bit worse. Moments that were supposed to feel very important felt very abrupt, like a scene before them was actually removed and you're missing something meaningful. The story itself, though, and what was there was actually pretty good in my opinion. It followed pretty well with the source material, but it was just so dulled down because of course they tried to make it a story that normal moviegoers would understand, and the general plot and the characters. They didn't want to make it too confusing or too convoluted, which I understand has been a complaint with Dune in the past, and the atmosphere was okay, but it wasn't perfect. It's almost like a middle ground movie between David Lynch's '84 Dune and the 2000 miniseries that Sci-Fi created. Sci-Fi focused on telling a story, and David Lynch focused on the atmosphere and being an epic telling of the tale. The 2021 version felt directly in between, but it doesn't work as well as it could have. It wasn't bad by any means, but there's a better way to tell Dune. I just know it in my bones, but the Villeneuve version just wasn't it. Now, I think that it's important to point out that the David Lynch movie definitely did veer off a bit from source material, even more than the sci-fi series did, but Lynch wanted to try and focus more on atmosphere than pure story, so it would be more memorable, and I definitely think that it paid off. He did things like create a more epic musical score, and when you hear that music, you think of Dune, something that the 2021 movie just didn't have. To some, the '84 movie was a completely botched mess, but to some, it was really fantastic and unique. An example of trying to create an atmospheric experience can be seen with how they changed the weirding way over the versions of Dune. In the books, it's more of a hand-to-hand combat style, same in 2021 Dune, and in the David Lynch movie, it's a sonic beam weapon, which a lot of people don't like, but there are also people who thought it came across really well. This version of Dune stayed pretty close to the source material, and I really like that, but a big problem is how they gender and race swapped characters. Dr. Liet Kynes has always been a male, and they changed the character to be a female person of color to promote diversity, and they used the excuse that Liet Kynes is a character that could be played by anyone, and I disagree. I do not like when they take characters and race or gender swap them using absolutely ridiculous reasons. And Dr. Liet Kynes is kind of a side character in this, as you're going to see. The main characters are basically Paul and Lady Jessica, and while that's pretty close to Dune, I still think that Dr. Liet Kynes should have been a male. I personally do not like the race and gender swaps, and I know a lot of people really didn't like this idea going into the movie. Now, talking about actors and characters for a minute, I thought that Rebecca Ferguson and Oscar Isaac did phenomenal. Rebecca Ferguson, in my opinion, is the best Lady Jessica that we've seen so far. She did amazing, but some of the acting was a little bit flat in my opinion, like Zendaya as Chani. I know that Chani was more of a side character in this film, and she wasn't the main star of the show, obviously, but I just thought the few scenes we saw her in were actually pretty flat. And when it comes to Paul, I'm still a little bit mixed, because the version of him that we see in David Lynch's 1984 Dune never seemed like a wimp, whereas in Villeneuve's Dune, you get a bit of that wimpy Paul at the very beginning, and through most of the movie, he's kind of a wimp. I mean, unfortunately, that's just kind of Paul's character at the beginning, and he doesn't become the strong Paul people like until the very end. I think that Villeneuve almost landed that, and I don't like Timothée Chalamet, but I didn't think he did an awful job here. I'm just hoping that in the next part 2 of Dune, he's going to be that strong Paul that a lot of people really like. After seeing every rendition of Dune and knowing what Hollywood could make out of this franchise, I truly think that Dune needs a Game of Thrones or miniseries style. They need to throw tons of money into episodes and make it a long, drawn-out series. Clearly, this movie had a hefty budget, but it just wasn't enough. It's like Warner Brothers wanted to go into it, giving it a shot, hoping that people would love it, but they weren't confident in it, so they gave it a number that they hoped they could break even on. I just don't think they really had a lot of confidence in it, and unfortunately, it shows. Snyder's cut of the Justice League by itself was $80 million, never mind what they spent in the first place. Dune 2021 had about $150 million budget, so it definitely wasn't small, but it seems like a reserve number when you're talking about a movie that they wanted to be an epic hit. Now, looking at the Rotten Tomato ratings, it is sitting at an 83% critic and a 92% audience, and I actually disagree with these. I thought that it was good in a lot of ways. I liked a lot of the acting. I liked a lot of the CGI. A lot of the scenes were laid out pretty well, but I felt the overall pacing wasn't great. Some of the actor choices weren't phenomenal, and it wasn't that memorable. There wasn't a lot of memorable music or memorable moments, besides, of course, the general Dune story. I didn't feel like a lot of the cinematography was perfect, and I felt the fight scenes were just a little bit lackluster. Did I think it was a bad movie? By any means, no, but it could have been so much better. I'd give it like a 7.5 out of 10, but that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts about Dune in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.